The story starts with Jensen Ames, who is an commercial employee and ex-convict. He learns that the metallic mill in which he works is shutting down and won't be paying the employees their complete wages. That's why the employees are protesting in the front of the enterprise. As frustration of few of the employees grows, anti-rebellion police arrive there. The police are responding to even the smallest provocation with violence. Whilst Jensen sees his co-employees being overwhelmed, he steps in and fights again. At some stage in the procedure, he's taking down a few officials with inside the chaos. Come on. By the point Jensen makes it domestic, it is already night time. He greets his spouse, after which is going upstairs to test on their infant. However, he's absolutely unaware that a masked intruder has damaged into the residence. Whilst Jensen is upstairs, the crook seizes the possibility to homicide his spouse with inside the kitchen. Whilst Jensen comes again downstairs, the man ambushes him from in the back of and knocks him subconscious. Earlier than leaving the intruder locations the homicide weapon in Jensen's hand and makes a taunting shooting gesture. Together along with his gloved hand, he had framed Jensen for the crime and left the residence. By the point time the police arrived there, Jensen wakes up moments later to locate the police arresting him for his spouse's homicide. 6 months later, Jensen is transferred to Terminal Island Jail. Upon arrival, he's greeted through Protectric, who sprays him with freezing water and additionally permits every other officer to hit him. After that, the Protect escorts Jensen to a mobiler shared with 3 other prisoners, calls on beating him up. But whilst Ulrich returns later with inside the wish of playing the aftermath, he sees that Jensen is a professional fighter who has already knocked all his cellmates out bloodless. The following morning, Jensen heads to the mess corridor for breakfast. He is quietly determined through prisoners educate Gunnar and lists to understand him as a former champion driving force whose record-breaking profession resulted in tragedy. The atmosphere all of sudden shifts whilst prisoners Pinko and his pal technique Jensen. They initiate him through spitting on his meals and insulting him through calling him a spouse killer and child abuser. Listening to this, Jensen snaps and assaults Pinko. However, earlier than the fight escalates, the guards intrude and drag him away to fulfill Claire Hennessy, who is the jail warden, in her office. Claire, famous that she is aware of all about Jensen's beyond as an exceptional driving force, she gives him a deal she needs Jensen to take at the function of Frankenstein, who was the masked tracer on this death race. The actual Frankenstein died at the operating desk after his final race. However, the public doesn't recognize this, but this makes it easy for a person else to take his place in the back of the masks. Frank become a fan favorite and an iconic legend. That's why Hennessy is decided to preserve his death a mystery. She desires the parable of Frankenstein to stay on and revive the show's scores due to the fact that his passing. Hennessy tells Jensen that in accordance to the regulations, a motive force earns their freedom after triumphing 5 races. Due to the fact that Frankenstein had already gained 4, Jensen might most effective want one greater victory to steady his launch. No matter the tempting prospect of freedom, Jensen hesitates due to the fact risking his existence in a deadly race isn't always a selection he's taking lightly. However, Hennessy may not take no for an answer. She threatens him with solitary confinement to make sure that he can't display her mystery with inside the jail. Now Jensen is left and not using a preference, however, to accept as true with the provide. Jensen is then taken to the jail's car keep, in which he meets Teach and his crew, the mechanics liable for maintaining Frankenstein's automobile. They provide an explanation for the regulations to Jensen. Each crew operates independently and there may be no helping every different. Jensen additionally notices a large workshop in which Hennessy has been secretly constructing something for weeks. Most effective, a pick few human beings including Teach's crew and a handful of guards recognize Jensen as the brand new Frankenstein. Hennessy's manage over the jail guarantees her mystery stays secure. After that, Teach introduces Jensen to his automobile. That's a closely modified Mustang V8 fastback. It is prepared with an array of offensive and shielding devices. However, no ammunition is loaded on the automobile until race day to save you prisoners from trying and break out. The Teach tells Jensen that escaping isn't an option from this hell because the jail is on an island. The most effective manner out is a narrow bridge which might be swarmed with police vehicles and helicopters. On the first Signe live a breakout after getting acquainted with the automobile. Jensen joins the crew with inside the jail backyard to continue their verbal exchange. Teach explains the shape of the race that says divided into 3 levels. With inside the first levels, the intention is to put off as many fighters as feasible. With inside the final degree, pace is the important thing to crossing the finish line first. Every motive force is assigned a navigator who's commonly a girl introduced in from the women's facility. The only exception is Joe, who makes use of a crew member. Alternatively, he's infamous for moving via female navigators so fast that it makes even the target market uncomfortable. Then a crew member list starts briefing Jensen on the important thing: drivers with inside the race, all of whom are gifted with inside the backyard. There may be 14K, who is Triad member and MIT graduate. Then there's Hector Grimm, who's a certified psychopath who idolizes Hennessy too. After that we get added with the aid of using Slovo Pakenko, who's the Aryan Brotherhood chief, and Travis Colt, who's a disgraced ex-NASCAR super mega celebrity. Their verbal exchange is reduced quick while Joe and his team method Jensen. They insult Jensen and supply the message that this race is best among Joe and Frankenstein. Simply then a van arrives in the jail that's returning inmates from a peace location. Jensen notices something unstandard approximately their wrists. They're carrying GPS monitoring bracelets on their fingers. The web page triggers a cognizance to Jensen that the person who killed his boss were carrying, certainly considered one among the ones bracelets to. The day of the primary race level subsequently arrives. Jensen is given Frankenstein's garments, masks, and even his ring to finish the training. His look on my own attracts again the visitors the display had lost earlier. Than the sport begins. Evolved the Educate advises Jensen to keep away from speaking to the alternative drivers, as retaining Frankenstein's silent mystique is a part of the act, but he is allowed to dispose of the masks whilst with inside the vehicle because the home windows are made of reflected glass and Case is already in on the name of the game as they put together for the race. Jensen asks Case why she's in jail. She well-known shows that she killed a cop who changed into her very own husband. She killed him due to the fact he changed into abusive. Their verbal exchange is reduced quick because the race begins. The primary lap isn't always too violent, as weapons may not set off till the 2D of the 3 laps. Nevertheless, the drivers do their excellent to shove each different off the song. To Case's know-how of the course, Jensen manages to live neck and neck with Joe on the front K9 left to 100 feet. While Case spots a shortcut, she guides Jensen through it, which permits him to take the lead. As soon as the second 1 lap begins, evolved Hennessy turns on the shields and guns, set off swords and shields. Now the drivers ought to steer their automobiles over unique manholes, hitting all 4 wheels to allow their attacking devices. Chaos erupts because the race becomes a full-scale conflict. Additionally, Hennessy ups the stakes through activating the loss of life heads, which can be certainly the lethal obstacles positioned strategically at the song. A driving force named Grimm makes use of them to his gain and kills a minor driving force through slamming his vehicle into certainly considered one among the tramps. He then slows Joe down through shooting oil at his vehicle and briefly knocks him again. However, Grimm's reign is short-lived. Soon 14K takes him out through launching a missile and forcing Grimm off the song. His vehicle crashes and Grimm comes out of it. Joe finishes him off through running over. All through the race, Jensen manages to set off the guns. However, his gadget gun JY Case bravely climbs onto the hood to repair it. However, this attracts a hail of bullets from the alternative drivers on Jensen's vehicle. Wait to Jensen's sharp-using abilities, he dodges the gunfire and Case effectively returns to the passenger seat. Because the race intensifies, Jensen steals a protection manhole from Colt. However, much like with the actual Frankenstein, none of his protection structure's paintings at that time. The rear shield is speedy carrying down with the aid of using the bullets being fired at. Thinking fast, Jensen comes up with a volatile plan. He instructs Case to unhook the napalm canister and take a seat down on his lap. Then he ejects her seat, which is now sporting the napalm, and it's fell directly at Colt's automobile. The napalm napalm smashes into Colt's automobile, and Case follows up with the aid of throwing the automobile's lighter, igniting the napalm and putting Colt's automobile on hearthplace. With Colt removed, Jensen yet again faces Joe head-to-head. Abruptly, Jensen notices Penko making a acquainted hand gesture. It's Miles, the identical one, the person who killed his spouse, made earlier, than fleeing the scene. Distracted with the aid of using this vision, Jensen loses focus. Joe seizes the possibility and slams Jensen's automobile, which forces him into ultimate area, while Penko claims first. With the aid of using the cease of the race, 3 drivers are lifeless and 6 stay for the following degree. Lower back at the storage, Instruct and his crew look at the automobile and discover no troubles with the gadgets. They may be baffled as to why the systems failed in the course of the race. Jensen is now annoyed and suspicious. Approximately Hennessy, he confronts her after a while and accuses her of making plans the entirety from framing him for his spouse's murder, rigging the race, and the use of Penko to lure him into taking up as Frankenstein. Hennessy would not affirm his suspicions, however counters with any other chance. She suggests Jensen a picture graph of his daughter, who is now in a foster domestic. Hennessy reminds Jensen that if he desires to see his daughter once more, he wishes to play alongside in the death race sport, as Jensen is unable to do an awful lot. Approximately Hennessy's threats, he returns to the backyard and chats with Coach. Jensen asks why Instruct would not put on a prisoner variety so Instruct explains that he is technically now no longer a prisoner anymore, as he certified for parole 3 years in the past, but he could not bring himself to depart this area as the Outdoor International had modified an excessive amount of, and he desired the familiarity of the jail and its races. The Instruct also exhibits that he would not agree with Jensen killed his spouse. Later that night, while running on his automobile, Jensen spots Penko strolling with the aid of using and comes to a decision to comply with him to his crew's pit. There, Jensen is ambushed with the aid of using Penko's guise. Penko lands some punches on Jensen earlier, than grabbing a heavy device. My lifestyles, he intends to ruin Jensen's head with this heavy device, notwithstanding knowing he is beneath Hennessy's safety. However, earlier than Penko can strike, Lists intervenes and stabs Penko with inside the lower back with a pen. Seizing the instant, Jensen grabs a metal stick from the floor and makes use of it to stab one in every of Penko's guys. He then knocks out his captors, after which turns his attention to Penko. He begins evolved punching Penko, throwing him into close-by device and slamming him into crates. Eventually Penko admits that Hennessy ordered him to kill Jensen's spouse, and that Tribicum is the one that added him to the residence. Simply as Jensen is ready to supply a deadly blow, Alish and some other protect arrive there and cut up the combat, pulling Jensen away. The following day, simply earlier than the second degree of the race starts, evolved Penko taunts Jensen once more, repeating the identical hand gesture that haunted him the night time his spouse become killed. This time, while the race starts, evolved Jensen intentionally begins evolved using slowly and takes a tunnel to have a non-public communique with Case. In the tunnel, Jensen accuses Case of in all likelihood killing the actual Frankenstein. Did you kill the antique Frank? What he factors out the suspicious failure of the auto's gadgets in 2 consecutive races. While she hesitates to solution, Jensen threatens to eject her from the auto if she would not respond to him. Simply seeing this situation, confesses that she sabotaged Frank's rear weapons under Hennessy's orders. Simply she become lured through the promise of her freedom. She insists the purpose become in no way to kill Frank, it become an twist of fate because of Frank's determined try and win without useful guns. Hennessy's actual aim become to make sure Frank misplaced so she could preserve him in jail and take advantage of his fame for the display. Together along with his suspicions showed, Jensen shifts gears and speeds returned into the race. For now he ignores Joe and units his points of interest in reality on Penko clash at the tune time and again and try and pressure every different off, but neither succeeds. Jensen then takes a formidable approach as he turns on the gun's manhole in place of the defense gadget. This puzzles all and sundry given that his automobile's guns are hooked up on the front. Moments later, Jensen surprises the complete crowd through spinning the auto around and using backward. He then shoots a barrage of gunfire on Pko's car. Once the harm is intense sufficient, Jensen returned around and releases a smoke display. Oak makes Pko crash into a concrete barrier. After that, Jensen stops his automobile, steps out and strategies Pko without hesitation. He breaks Pko's neck in cold blood and avenges his spouse. In the meantime, Joe comes to a decision to change out his navigator with inside the center of the race. Simply then, Hennessy seizes the possibility to unveil the name of the game weapon she's been getting ready for weeks. Launch the Dreadnought. It's miles a massive closely armed tanker truck dubbed Dreadnought. The Dreadnought is terrifying and unequaled in electricity. It dares via the tune, unexpectedly catching up with the racers and at once obliterating two minor competition. Its sheer length and firepower provided some other advantage. Furthermore, it's allowed to go into homes at the course, which permits it to take a shortcut and reappear on the front of the race. The Dreadnought methodically goals 14K's navigator and slowly tortures him earlier than the usage of chains to seize his vehicle and hearthplace at it till it bursts into flames. With Best Jensen and Joe closing the race, seems not possible to win without a plan. Simply then, Jensen asks Lists to attach his communicator to Joe's vehicle and to conform to shape an alliance. Collectively they flank the Dreadnought and skillfully dodges its relentless assaults whilst they come upon Entice manhole. Each drivers hit it with wheels to prompt the trap and pressure the Dreadnought to crash into it. With the Dreadnought disabled, the second degree ends. Best Jensen and Joe are now left to continue to the very last race. Later that nighttime, Joe methods Jensen in the pit. He notes that Jensen's voice suspiciously resembles Frank's. Meanwhile, Hennessy and Dre determine that Jensen must be removed with inside the very last sport. The next day, simply earlier than the very last degree of the race starts, evolved all locations a bomb under Jensen's vehicle whilst Hennessy distracts everybody with a speech approximately racing being their reason, as she mentions that this will be the primary time someone wins their freedom with a fifth victory. Jensen realizes something demanding. He thinks that Hennessy has rigged the races all alongside to put off all people who may want to win a fifth time. No person has ever reached that milestone due to the structure's manipulation, meaning like all the others earlier than him, he may not be allowed to win nowadays. Both Educate has additionally heard Jensen's recognition approximately the race rigging, so he suggests Jensen a critical element from a video of Grimm's dying. This sparks in concept in Jensen's thoughts, and he asks Lists to put in a half-gallon reserve tank in his vehicle. He then visits Joe's pit to suggest some other collaboration whilst Jensen modifications into Frank's garments. Hennessy visits him with his launch papers and a brand new provide. She says that if Jensen wins nowadays, she wants him to live in jail as Frankenstein to hold the legacy. She argues that an ex-convict like him would not have the ability to offer his daughter with a great life, and staying with inside the race could be the last. Selfless damages his return shield so severely that he's compelled to drop it, but Joe already is aware of the way to avert such attacks, having discovered from Frank's beyond tricks. Hennessy, keen to preserve the audience engaged, turns on a protection manhole for Jensen. However, Joe counters with a rocket that destroys it. Joe continues launching rockets at Jensen, however Jensen skillfully dodges them, permitting them to crash into a wall. That's an antique weakness from Grimm's Loss of Life. Jay and Joe had deliberate this second the rockets hit the partition's weak factor in the end, beginning a hollow large sufficient for the two of them to get away in place of racing for victory or staying in the sport. They have engineered their very last act of rebel, that's escaping the prison and breaking free from the Jensen's automobile, but her plan fails due to the fact Teach and his crew have already eliminated and deactivated the bomb. In the meantime, Jensen and Joe speed towards the bridge, however the police vehicles are final in. It is time for the next part of their getaway plan. Jensen releases the greater 1/2 gallon reserve tank which he had deliberate to drop in advance. The tank hits the pursuing police vehicles, inflicting an explosion and a fiery wall that blocks the direction of police and forestalls any extra vehicles from following them. The two convicts controlled to make it throughout the bridge gates. They then cut up onto two special roads to confuse the helicopters which might be warm on their tail. The helicopter besters recognition on Jens as he is the maximum critical target. In the meantime, Case has the same opinion to assist Jensen with the very last degree of the plan due to the fact she feels she owes it to Frank, and for the reason that Hennessy has already given her launch papers. She's assured they may allow her pass as soon as it's through. Out as they pressure beyond construction cranes, Jensen takes the possibility to bounce off the automobile and conceal below their shadows. Case takes over the wheel and drives a bit farther earlier than the helicopters pressure her to forestall with a wall of hearth place while she exits the automobile with her arms raised and give up. She's carrying Frank's garments and masks, so now she has taken his vicinity. This twist leaves anybody careworn. The Case is now assuming the identification of Frankenstein and assisting Jensen to get away from Hennessy's grip. Case is arrested with the aid of using the law enforcement officials and returned to jail while Jensen efficaciously escapes. He meets up with Joe and the two board a train collectively, leaving the chaos at the back of them. In the meantime, inside the jail places of work, he watches because the rankings leap to new heights with congratulatory gifts already rolling, and he opens a present box. Best to locate it consists of the bomb that R himself had planted below Jensen's vehicle. Simply then the bomb detonates, killing each R and Hennessy with inside the explosion. Out of doors, Train may be visible having activated the detonator, making sure that the two corrupt figures are taken down. 6 months later, Jensen and Joe have settled in Santa Rosalia, Mexico. They have commenced sparkling with a brand new lifestyles. They now run their personal vehicle Mobile, keep running together as mechanics. Jensen has regained custody of his daughter and the whole lot appears to have fallen into area. Case is likewise now loose after her launch papers were in the end processed. She visits them and brings a racing vehicle for them to check out.